as we get closer to the trade deadline, really once June starts, and we are 6 days from June, once June starts, teams start making real assessments of are they selling, are they buying, and making plans for what they're going to do as you get closer to the deadline. So I'm going to give you 4 potential trade targets. Tell me who you like, who you don't like, who you might like the most.
Okay.
All right. Lucas Giolito of the White Sox. He's 28, righty. He's making $10.5 million this year. He's a free agent at the end of the year. Currently, 3-3, 3.62 ERA, 112 WHIP. But certainly a guy who would at least be a middle of the rotation starter. When he's on, could be almost a 2. With 3 starters down, one of whom you know you're not getting back this year. And the other 2 guys, maybe you don't feel a whole confident level that they're definitely going to come back and pitch the entire
Well, yeah,
season.
I was going to say
when they
come
get
back and stay back, right?
So, come back and then stay back, or will they have another setback? Lucas Giolito as a trade target.
Like him. Mentioned it. We've talked about it here on the show. I like him because of the fact that you shouldn't have to give up as much for an organization that still is trying to rebuild its farm system. I don't think you're going to have to give up as much because everybody knows he's a rental. He's going to be free at the end of the year, as you mentioned, and he's going to be looking for greener pastures and lots of years and trying to get the next big deal. But in the meantime, he fills a void for you and a short-term need as starting pitcher, plays for a contender, puts more eyeballs on his ability, and if he can get out of hell in Chicago and find a way to up his play with a good team, it could be a win-win. And so, therefore, because of the fact that I think the price would be lower, though I think there'll be competition for his services, I think that he adds to your rotation when you need someone to do that with experience, with plus stuff, with the ability to do what you need him to do. And like I said, he's also going to sell his services so that everybody can see that he's going to be at a certain level when the bidding begins in the offseason. And I think he helps you immensely. So I think that's someone that they should definitely look at and explore. We had talked about would you give up Corey Lee for him? I think that might be too much because of the fact that I don't think you might have to give up that much depending on what other teams are going to offer. But at this point, because of knowing what we know about Yainer Diaz, I would even consider that because I think it's very important this year to shore up the back half of your rotation. And he would definitely do that, along with a guy like J.P. France, like we talked about.
I think a guy like Corey Lee, look, it would hurt to part with him. Mm-hmm. At the same time, because now more teams are eligible for the postseason,
sure,
there are going to be less teams who sell. The White Sox have potentially 3 starting pitchers to deal. Everybody's going to come knocking on their door. If, because of competition to acquire him, I had to give up a Corey Lee, I feel a lot better about that if I know going in, hey, I'm gonna make a real hard attempt to sign him to an extension.
And I think you can do that. You didn't spend all the money you could have spent in the offseason. I think that there's ways that with this team, with Jim Crane, with the way Dana Brown thinks too, that I'm talking worst case scenario, he's a rental. Best case scenario is he really likes it here, and he understands that playing with a team like that behind him and offensively, he can up his stats and actually up his value. And if he's taken care of, he could stay. And then that eases the pain of having to worry every single season about what's wrong with Lance McCullers, regardless of what happens with Garcia and or Urquidy. And I think that would give you a luxury that you didn't think you had to go get in the last couple of years. You knew your starting pitching was the strength of the entire team, no matter how good your offense was. Now there's some question marks because of injuries. This would help you as an insurance policy for any one of those guys and make your starting rotation stronger again. So I like this move a lot if it's doable.
Guys like winning, and over the last 6 years, nobody has won more than the Houston Astros. Let's take a look at the offensive side.
Yep.
Outfielder, Jock Peterson, lefty bat, he's 31, makes $19.5 million, free agent at the end of the year. Currently has an 844 OPS. He is a left-handed bat, but he also has big-time splits. He crushes right-handed pitching, needs to sit against lefties.
Cannot stand him. He's my least favorite player in the entire league, going all the way back to his Dodger days. And then the Braves, of course, and the way he was doing the same kind of crap in the World Series. But I know he can hit. And I know that he's a guy that's been a rental for the last several years, and he just bounces around from team to team, but he finds his way to the playoffs. He finds his way into big moments. He's capable of doing things when he's in those big moments. And I think that it's obviously someone that you could consider, but at 19 and a half, that's an awfully big price tag. Now, again, because you didn't spend it all this last offseason and he's free at the end of the year, it is still an option that you can consider. But I think that comes down to more or finding out or having to come to grips with you may not see Michael Brantley all season. Because to me, I'm not worried about that left field and corner outfield position, though it makes sense because if you believe they still want to put Jordan out there instead of DH at least half the time, that maybe with what you're talking about with the splits, that there's a possibility that makes sense. It's just an awfully big price tag, and I don't know what price you'd have to pay to make the trade and then have to pay him that amount of money. So that one I'm a little more leery about. I'm going to take a pass on him.
I would think because of the money that you're probably not giving up a ton in prospects. You're taking on a lot of money.
Might be a couple double A's maybe. I don't know.
I'd say mid to lower tier type prospects, guys who are outside your top 20.
Yep.
Here is a local guy, Randall Grichuk. Righty bat, he's 31, making $9.5 million. He's a free agent. Just got activated off the IL a couple of weeks ago, but 324 since he's come back, 831 OPS. Guy who last season had 19 homers. Hasn't always put up big on bases. Usually has an OPS somewhere in the low mid 700s, but can play all three outfield positions.
I've been a fan of the way he plays the game. I think a lot of people that have listened to me for a lot of years knew when Kyle Tucker was absolutely just not doing anywhere close to Kyle Tucker things. And I kept saying, how long and how many years do we have to be patient with the slow start of Kyle Tucker? That one of the names I threw out there as someone that they could look at was Randall Grichuk, because I think that he plays, like you said, he plays multiple positions. He's not going to be a guy that's going to be an all-star per se for you, but he can put up good numbers. He's got some pop that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. And I think, again, as a guy that might not be in your long-term plans, but you could do a lot worse than having him around, is a guy that is a perfect fourth outfielder for this team that could be the third outfielder for this team while you're trying to figure out what's going on with Brantley.
He's right-handed.
How many years you got left?
He's free agent at the end of the year.
Oh, so again, you're not going to have to give up a whole lot. I like it.
Right-handed bat with a little bit of pop. That's kind of been the bugaboo for them this year is, the righty power bats were supposed to be Bregman and Abreu, and those guys haven't delivered as yet. So can you get another guy that you can bring into the rotation and say, all right, look, this guy's going to join our outfield rotation. He's a righty bat. He's got a little pop to him, and he can play everywhere. So if I need a guy to play center field, he can play. If I need somebody to play right field, I don't have to listen to Dusty Baker say, well, I have to play Kyle Tucker because essentially Corey Julks is not allowed to play right field for me. He's a guy that can play all those positions. And again, I don't think the cost of acquisition would be all that high.
I think that's the key. I think in everybody that you've mentioned so far, the fact that essentially it would be a rental is a great proposition for the Astros. It's a great proposition for whichever team is unloading their player because they realize they can get something for them. But I think that it's a win-win because the player gets a chance to play for a winner on a bigger stage to really show their wares. And at the same time, the Astros get someone on the short term that can really help them with some of the areas that they've been struggling.